Hi, this is Michael William Denny of ThunderShamanism.com, and today we're going to be talking about the next chapter in the book, the Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. I think that's what it is. The Shamanic Secret Commandment to Living a Perfect Life. The missing ingredient to the secret. So, in the beginning, I talked to you about that there's only one commandment. By the way, if you haven't, go ahead and watch that first video and get yourself up to date. So we talked about how there's only one commandment, and that I stressed the word that this is a commandment, that in order to live your perfect life, there is one commandment you have to follow. And it's not a religious commandment, it's a commandment that you created within yourself before you were born. And we all do this. We set this up in such a way so that if we don't follow the commandment, with everything that we have and take it very seriously, then we end up having all kinds of problems. We end up with physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, problems, which become issues that we have to learn lessons from later on in either later on in life or in next incarnations. So I'm going to get into the next chapter, which is how I discovered the secret commandment. So the way I discovered this commandment was that I went through a major life challenge. I had been in a committed relationship for 10 years. I had been married the last few years of those 10 years. And I had run into major physical problems. I had debilitating back spasms. If you ever had like back pain, you know what I'm talking about. But I was having spasms not only in my lower back, but in upper parts of my back and my neck, and I was just having spasms all the time. I had debilitating joint pain. My left knee had swollen up huge. I could barely use it. Sometimes I couldn't, walk for very long because my knee was so painful. I had debilitating neck pain. My neck was constantly, I was getting that, quote, pinched nerve. I had shooting pains all down my legs. I had tendonitis. And, and this is somebody who taught martial arts. I taught shamanism. I taught qigong, So, you would think, somebody who does all that should be able to fix all that. And it wasn't getting any better. It was getting worse. And I had just come to the conclusion, well, that's it. I thought I was getting older, at the time that things really shifted. I was 49 years old. And I thought, well, this is what happens. Doctors had been saying the same thing. They told me that my tendonitis was a result of, playing percussion, and that the constant banging on the head of the drum was tearing micro tears in the tendons. The knee pain and the joint pain was because of martial arts practice and, hiking and all that kind of stuff. And, so they were basically saying that, you're screwed. This is it. You did this damage to yourself. You're going to have to live on medication, pain medication, which I didn't take, by the way. But, you're going to have to be on pain medication, and it's not about what you can do. You're just going to have to get along the best you can. And I was gaining weight, and I was depressed, and, the two things that I loved doing, the three things that I loved doing, hiking in the mountains, surfing, and, weight training, those kinds of things I couldn't do anymore. So I was looking at, gosh, this is going to be the rest of my life. And I did an interesting thing, which completely changed everything in my life. And that was this. As I was sitting there, and I remember I was sitting in my front yard in front of my house on the bench, looking out over my garden that I had at the time. At the time I was living in this big 5-bedroom, brand new 2-story house on a half-acre. It was, I had made it. And I was sitting in that front yard looking at that beautiful yard, and I was still realizing how unhappy I was, and that I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to do, and that I felt trapped, and that I realized that the things, I lived in Idaho, there's not a lot of surfing in Idaho. I wasn't going to surf anymore, and I was, I was living my life to please, or try to please, my spouse, and I was miserable, and I got angry. And I just said, you know what, I'm too young for this. I'm too young to be this much in pain. It's just not right. I'm only 49. I'm not 89. I'm 49. This is ridiculous. I refuse to be in pain anymore. Now, at that time, based on what the doctors were telling me, I was listening to what they said. And I didn't care. I just made the decision. And it was a firm decision and a firm commitment that I was not going to be old or in pain anymore. And that I was going to make sure that I lived the rest of my life doing all the things that made me happy. Now, I'm a very physical person, so I need physical activity and exercise and sports. And if I don't do that, I'm very unhappy. So I decided I was going to do all the things that I wanted to do, and I didn't care how much pain I was in. I wasn't going to let anything stop me from doing what I wanted to do. Now, the sky didn't open, and the angels didn't descend, and fairies didn't touch me and magically make it all go away. No, that was the beginning, though. Once I made that commitment, I then committed more fully to my relationship. Now, here's the ironic thing. I committed more fully to that relationship, and the relationship completely fell apart. You know, I won't get into the details, but the bottom line is that it was very clear to me that I was not going to be able to make this woman happy, and that there was really only one thing for me to do. So we separated, and then a short time after that, we decided to get a divorce. And guess what happened? All of my symptoms started going away. And I had all this freedom. Now, I wasn't in bliss, because I had lost my house, I had lost my business, I had lost my spouse, I had lost my dogs, I had no money to my name. The only money that I had was a few $100s a week, and that was coming from book sales and DVD sales. But I didn't have anything else, and I had no idea where to go. You know, I had no income. And all of the people in my life disappeared. I had no family. I couldn't call anybody up and say, hey, can I come stay with you? I didn't have mother, father, sister, brothers. Nobody would take me in. In fact, there were people whose phone numbers I had, you know, people I knew that I were friends with, who had said, hey, listen, you know, if you ever need a place to stay, I got this apartment on top of my garage. I remember one guy specifically said this. I got this apartment on top of my garage. You can stay there if you ever need to, you know. And called that guy up, never heard back from him. And I had nothing. I ended up, thank God, there was one friend in my life, you know, because here I am, I'm in so much physical pain, I'm thinking, oh my God, I got to go to work, I got to go to Walmart and become a greeter. You know, I didn't have any marketable skills, you know. An actor and a writer, you know, martial artist, we don't really have marketable skills at age 49. So I didn't know what to do. And thankfully, I had a friend from childhood, has been my best friend, still is my best friend. He said, come on, you can stay with me, and I ended up living on his couch. And it wasn't the best scenario, but at least I had a place to stay. But there I was, boom, stuck there, and I'm like, what am I going to do? And once it became clear that my now ex-wife and I were going to divorce, I was like, well, and I had put my whole life and identity into being her husband and to having that home and that business, and that was all gone. So you can imagine I was incredibly depressed, and I was in huge amounts of pain. And I was thinking about going on disability. It was that bad. I'm like, well, I have to go on disability. How else am I going to survive? Because I didn't think I was physically capable of, you know, going and doing a job and showing up and walking around and lifting things or driving, because that's really, you know, all you can do when you have my skills. That is if you're going to work for somebody else. So the other thing that happened was that I had complete freedom. Luckily, I didn't have any debt. I didn't have any responsibilities to anybody. I didn't have any children. I didn't have any pets. So really, I was free to do whatever I wanted as long as I was capable financially of doing it. And that sort of opened me up. But here I am still in a lot of pain. I'm thinking about going into you know, going into disability and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, hell, I'm just going to do whatever I want. And I did something that I've done numerous times in my life, which has always served me. And I sat myself down and I said this. I said, all right, if I could do anything and be anything, and I didn't have to worry about money, what would I do? And I realized I wanted to live in the forest. So I went online, and I had found a cabin in the forest, deep in the woods of North Idaho, that was right on the edge of national forest, that was at the end of a 20-mile dirt road. That was the last house that had electricity. I mean, it was the farthest I could go into the wilderness without actually going off the grid. And it came available, and I Didn't have the money. I didn't know where I was going to get the money to be able to pay the rent to live. I had a credit card. I used that for first and last months, and I moved in. And I took care of that bucket list. And that got me into this mindset where I was furiously writing my books and making DVDs. So if you ever get some of my DVDs and you see me out in the middle of the forest, and I'm a little, I was a little heavier than I am now, that's where I was. I was in my cabin. And what ended up happening is that slowly all of my physical symptoms that were, incurable started disappearing. I had had surgery on my left knee because of a meniscus tear, and they were telling me that's what was causing all the problems. And even after they got rid of the meniscus, the meniscus flap, I still was in huge pain. And so they're telling me, oh, yeah, you've got a problem, bone on bone, and none of that's true. That's gone. Back spasms, gone. Tendinitis, gone. I'm back in physical shape. I'm in the gym lifting again. I've lost a huge amount of fat on my body, and I've gained a lot of muscle. And I just recently had my numbers done by a doctor, and he came back and he said, you've got the numbers of a 25-year-old. He said, I've never seen anything like this. And it started to sink in. This is how to live your life. You live your life following your deepest joy. So that's I've talked long enough. That's the second chapter in how I discovered the secret commandments. So if you want, you can go ahead and buy the book there. There's a link there below. If you want to work with me as a life coach or a guide or a mentor or whatever else word you want to use, click on apprenticeship, and I can work with you for 1 hour a week to help you get this for yourself as well. So until next time, my friends, thanks.